I feel like you need to start with the crisis that's unfolding right at this very hour on Beacon Hill. The legislative session ends at midnight, and there are still 9 major bills, including a major housing bill and a major economic development bill, that are stuck in conference committees. No one knows what's going to come out of it. No one knows what's in there. And meanwhile, the Speaker and the Senate are sniping at each other and a bunch of other bills. It's not a great environment there. But what it does mean is if you were now in Beacon Hill and you weren't part of those committees, you're going to be asked to vote on these bills, presumably between now and midnight, before you read them. You won't have a chance to really know what's ultimately in those bills. So my question is, and I'll start with you, Amy Sangiolo, why do you want to work in a place that operates like that?
Well, I thank you for asking that question. It is very frustrating to see what's happening at the last 24 hours that we have before the legislative session ends. I want to go in there because I believe that I have the experience working with a large body of folks dealing with some really tough issues. Now, the city council was much more transparent, I think, than what we have at the State House. But whatever I can do to help facilitate more transparency and more openness, I definitely would like to do that.
Okay. Same question for you, Alex.
Yeah. So why do I want to be a part of the process? Definitely a great question. I think probably most people on this call know that if I was in it for anything like money or power, that this is the wrong job to apply for. Ultimately, I want to be on Beacon Hill because I want to help as many people as possible. And I think that this is the perfect forum for it. Obviously I grew up in Newton, went K through 12 here, spent most of my life in Massachusetts, minus 6 years. I'm very passionate about this state. I have so much love for this city that gave me everything, and I want to be able to give back to it. We need a person that's going to go the extra mile. And I think that I'm the person that's going to be able to do that. With the finance background, with the oversight background, I think that I'm able to bring those skills there.
Okay. So let me just, but exactly to the point of this question, you're going to ask to vote on bills you don't know. How do you feel about why are you willing to do that? And then I'll come back to you, Amy, and ask the same thing. Knowing that if you go against the grain, if you were out there speaking against leadership right now, you'd be punished and you'd never get on a good committee or a good assignment because that is the way it works on Beacon Hill.
Yeah, Greg, well, I'd love to answer that one. So to answer your question in terms of not knowing the contents of the bill, no, I'm not comfortable with that. And if you want to vote for a rubber stamp or someone that's going to get strong-armed into doing things, then you're voting for the wrong candidate if you're voting for me. I'm an auditor. Rubber stamping is the exact type of thing that got us into things like Enron, Arthur Andersen, Tyco, WorldCom, etc. If you want to use a more government example, that's what got us into the Puerto Rican debt crisis by signing off on bills at the last minute, not knowing their contents, and things like that. So if I'm briefed by the conference committee beforehand, if I have reasonable assurance, sure, that's fine. As for the point that you made about getting taken off committees, I would like to bring a very relevant example here. KCON, Ruth Balzer, going up, let's go back to the early 2000s here. They went up against Speaker Finneran. They had a very famous fight there. He tried to draw them into the same district. Didn't end up working out after pressure from outside groups. There was, talking about taking them off committees. I know Ruth ultimately did get taken off of one committee, but in the end, both of them ended up becoming chairs. Ruth for a chair for a division and Kay for a committee. Both of them are retiring on their own accord. Finneran ended up going to prison. So I would say that ultimately people that stand up for the people of the 11th district end up, in a pretty good position, and people that strong arm tend to end up in pretty bad positions.
Okay, so I'll go to Amy with that basic same question, but I think as Amy remembers, David Cohn, who was a state representative, basically got pushed out of Beacon Hill, ended up running for mayor because he didn't want to go along with the grain in Beacon Hill. It ended his route there.
Right, but then he became mayor of Newton, so things worked out for him at the end of the day. So yeah, I think it's very troubling to get last minute amendments to bills or last minute bills put in at the end of a session. I strived when I was on the city council to make sure that I knew everything that was going on. I think to some extent anybody who's at the state legislature should know what bills are up there, what is being discussed. We might not know what's happening behind the committee, in the conference committees and all the little last minute deals that are being made. But at the end of the day, we have a basic understanding of what needs to get done and how that needs to get done. And to the maximum extent possible, I will read every single bill and try to understand all the last minute issues that are and bills and trade-offs that are being made in order to get the work done.
Okay, thank you. And Amy, so since you mentioned Mayor Cohn ultimately becoming mayor from the state rep, and that worked out pretty good, you've run for mayor twice, and you're running for this job now. Which job do you really want?
I actually think that this is the better fit for me, just given my experience in the legislature and on the local level, and also given my state experience working at the state attorney general's office. That really was an eye-opening experience, particularly in housing. Because I deal directly with individuals and families who are facing eviction and foreclosure. So to see a different segment of our population and see the struggles that they have has been really eye-opening. I've been working with 8 different state agencies and different nonprofit and for-profit organizations that provide services, try to provide that wraparound service to keep people housed. And I see the sort of the disconnect. And part of the drive for me to run for this office is to get the state agencies and the local nonprofits to work together collaboratively to make sure, not just with housing, but with any issue, any social service issue, we really need that kind of coordination throughout the state.
So Alex, let me ask you a question about that. So Amy Sangiello has a couple decades of experience in the city council, no legislative experience. You've never run for elected office before. Knowing how complicated things can be in Beacon Hill, why would we not want someone with that kind of experience instead of someone brand new to it?
Yeah, hey, it's a valid question, and I think that it's one that needs to be asked, right? So anyone that's my age, is going to be met with a degree of skepticism. So I'll bring forth a few points. Yes, in terms of government experience, yes, I have served on the Financial Audit Advisory Committee for the city for over a year now. I was appointed by former President Albright. But in terms of actual elected office, yes, I have not held it before. What I do bring to the table is other experience. So I bring that financial experience to the table, something that I think we desperately need, the oversight experience as well as the budget management experience. I would also like to highlight that Kay also did not have any elected experience before she came into the legislature. And she was able to bring things like, as a psychiatric nurse, she was able to bring that experience to the table. It was able to do things like bring forth mental health legislation at a time that it was highly stigmatized. I also, of course, am in a different field, but I'm able to bring that area of expertise. I'm, of course, not knocking my opponent in any way for serving 20 years very admirably on the board of aldermen / city council. But we do bring different experience sets to the table. What I would say, in addition to that is, hey, both of us have served 0 years in the state legislature. We would both be coming in the freshman class. It is a different ball game. Absolutely, there are similarities, but of course, it is a completely different position.
Great. And just a quick follow-up, why not run for city council first, Alex?
Yeah, I'll bring it back to one of my first answers. I want to help as many people as possible. I see this as an area where I can do that. I really like and respect people that are representing my ward currently in the city council, and think that they are doing a good job. Obviously, part of this is timing. If Kay was running again, I would not be running against her. I think she's done a great job representing the district for the past 29 years. So yeah, transparency is a big part of my campaign. Definitely part of it is timing, but I think the biggest part of it is the role that I have been looking after for quite a while. And I think it's the area that I can have the most impact as an individual on the city and the Commonwealth that I love and help run.
Great. Okay, so Amy, let me ask a sort of different version of that same question. So there's a lot of talk in the Democratic Party about the need for generational change and generational leadership. And nationally, we're all excited about the prospect of generational change in the Democratic Party. Why should voters not choose generational change and elect Alex, somebody who could really be there long enough to actually work his way up on committees, knowing how long it takes to work your way through Beacon Hill?
So I just want to say that I have a wide breadth of support throughout the community, basically because of the work that I've done over the, I'd say 30 plus years of living here in Newton. Not only did I serve on the city council for 20 years, I work at the state at the Attorney General's office, but I've been involved with nonprofit and for-profit organizations throughout the city who serve different programmatic functions throughout the city, right? Whether it's kids, whether it's PTO organizations, youth athletic organizations, environmental organizations, immigrant organizations. I've got that wide breadth of experience. I've reached out to youth. I have kids working on my campaign, not just to go and canvass, but to also learn about policy and inform me and educate me about what they'd like to see. So I think that's what I bring to the table.
Yeah,
And
but
I think
I think you're not quite getting the question though. So why should we not be at this moment in time, since given how rarely these jobs turn over, be thinking it's time for, we could say Amy Sangiello is an amazing person, has done a great person, good track record, but it's time for younger people to start taking leadership in this country, in the state. Why should voters not make that part of their consideration when how they vote?
because I think the challenges that we're facing are very critical, and that I think a great deal of knowledge and experience leading and succeeding in these areas, whether it's environment, whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's funding our public transit system, whether it's funding and fighting for more dollars for our schools. I think that's what's important. Someone with experience is needed at the State House in order to move these bold proposals forward.
Okay, let's move on.